Welcome to Resistance Live. Since 2017, Resistance Live has been the go-to home for political and legal news and analysis through a decidedly progressive activist lens. I'm your host, Elizabeth Cronise McLaughlin. I'm a former Wall Street and human rights lawyer, a lifelong organizer, and a leadership and impact consultant for all those seeking to lead big progressive change in these incredibly challenging times. To get bonus broadcasts, ask questions, and more, don't forget to become a paid subscriber to the show at patreon.com/resistancelive. And to learn more about what we do to help progressive leaders everywhere, check out GaiaLeadershipProject.com. And now, here's today's show. Well, 1 year and 1 day from the inauguration of President Trump for a second time, we have just witnessed within the last hour perhaps the most insane speech that Trump has ever given. He is at Davos, of course, at the Global Economic Forum, and I don't even know where to start with this one, you guys. The speech that he just gave, seriously, if in any other context, would result in someone probably being put in an involuntary hold in a mental institution. He confused repeatedly Iceland and Greenland. He claimed that Iceland should come to us, that Iceland was the reason why the stock market dipped yesterday, that Iceland has already cost the United States a mountain of money, when what he meant to be talking about was Greenland. Then he talked about invading Greenland with a threat to NATO. He talked about how, basically thought NATO was worthless. That's not anything new. But he did say that up until the United States decided they wanted Greenland, NATO used to call him daddy. I'm quoting that. He also explicitly threatened Ilhan Omar on the international stage. He engaged in the most virulent gutter racism about Somalis and all these claims about eugenics and intelligence, which, we've heard him say now several times before, but truly it's absolutely appalling. And there's no question at this point that he is gone. He couldn't pronounce other countries. He couldn't remember who the Swiss head of state was, despite the fact that he claimed that she rubbed him the wrong way, quote unquote. Just an appalling, embarrassing, disgusting display on the international stage. And of course, Mike Johnson is out already this morning claiming that he didn't see it. That will come as no surprise. Honestly, if the man ever writes an autobiography, I have no idea what you're talking about should probably be the title. All that said, I do want to just say that the calls, one of the things that's been very noticeable in the last 3 or 4 days is there is a increase in awareness in the mainstream media, and maybe awareness is the wrong word, willingness to state it in the mainstream media that something is very, very, very wrong with the president. Jake Tapper, who I still hold a massive grudge against for all of the things that he trashed Biden for, which were nothing, let's just be really clear about this, compared to anything that Trump has done in his first year, let alone a speech that he just gave, has finally started reposting threads on social media about the president's mental instability. We're also seeing ongoing discussions now about how insane it would be for the president to invade Greenland. And that includes from Republican congressmen and senators. As we discussed yesterday, Don Bacon has been out there saying that invading Greenland would be an impeachable offense after he voted to acquit Trump of impeachment after January 6th. So, we're starting to see a much greater awareness of Trump's absolutely undeniable instability and dementia at this point. And I have to say there were questions on the Patreon feed this morning about where does this get us? And the thing that I just have to say is that, there are, of course, just, to repeat it again, only two means to remove a sitting president from office. One is impeachment. The other is the 25th Amendment. And I have to remind everybody who continues to call for the 25th Amendment that would require J.D. Vance and half the cabinet, at least, to agree to notify Congress that he was no longer fit to serve. And I have to tell you, I do not see that happening. I think as much as J.D. Vance is probably the most craven, ambitious politician that we have seen in our lifetimes, nonetheless, and that's, like in a big box of very craven, ambitious politicians, nonetheless, I do not see him continuing down any path that will require him to go after Trump due to what it would do to the MAGA base. So that leaves us with impeachment. And, we talked about impeachment yesterday. Impeachment is not out of the realm of possibility. And, one of the things that I want to just remind everybody of here is that public pressure works. Again, I have to keep telling people this because it's like everybody has such a short memory. But if we put public pressure on the House of Representatives, which only holds a tiny majority for the Republicans right now, like 2 seats, right? We put pressure on the Republicans to impeach because of how crazy this is. And we put pressure on the Senate. I don't know. At the bare minimum, an impeachment inquiry would tie up attention and resources and media time in a way that could potentially take away from Trump's schemes and ambition and policies. So my view on this at this point is that any form of pressure that could be levied should be levied. And the other thing I just want to say about J.D. Vance, because I have to remind everybody, of course, he's backed by Peter Thiel and Mark Anderson and a whole bunch of other oligarch tech bro fascists. But he can't hold the base together. Nobody likes him. He has no allegiances to anybody. When he was a senator on the Hill, he was universally despised. And so even if Vance were to succeed in the office through impeachment or the 25th Amendment or anything else, it would mean the end of MAGA. I don't know what to say to you all other than the fact that I do think the public pressure is growing. The public voices are getting louder. This particular speech, look, I'm with Mariam Kaba that I can't be embarrassed because it's not my embarrassment, right? Like I didn't vote for the guy, but there is this thing. If you've had any kind of indoctrination into American mythology, and it is mythology, it's not fact or reality, of watching an American leader absolutely humiliate and tank any form of diplomacy on the international stage that is kind of really gross. So, and off-putting and mortifying and not the way things are quote unquote supposed to work. That is not forgiving or bypassing any of the harm that we have done as a murderous, colonialist nation. I have so many adjectives I could put in there. All that said, I don't see how anybody can watch what happened today and not know that the president is extremely unwell. And the outcome of that will depend on what public pressure does to people on the Hill. In contrast, at Davos, we had an incredible speech yesterday from Canadian Prime Minister Carney, which I would encourage everybody to go watch. Now, the thing I will tell you about this is that speech is essentially about the end of American empire. And I think that it actually is quite brilliant. One of the things, all notwithstanding the fact that, he starts out kind of like slamming communists and then demanding that everybody work together, which is kind of a weird way to go. But, nonetheless, one of the things that that I want people to be aware of is that it signaled the beginning of a new collaborative world order that essentially excludes the United States. And we knew this was going to be a potential outcome to it. And I have to say that I'm not convinced that it's all that terrible. Because frankly, one of the things that has allowed so much havoc to be wreaked is that the United States has held this enormous position of power over other countries. Empires fall, right? We know that. And I think that Carney's signaling that there were trade agreements and alliances and military alliances to be built among other countries, that sustainable alliances rather than isolationism were the way forward, is actually a really good thing. So I want to encourage, people to go watch it if you haven't seen it. Frankly, the other thing I will just say is that it didn't dumb down a damn thing. It was very intelligent and erudite. The absolute opposite to the mumbling fascist nonsense word dribble that we just got from the president of the United States. And that's on top of the fact that we had, a senior Danish official yesterday on the floor of their own parliament tell Donald Trump to fuck off, like literally in those words. Let me say this in words that you will understand, Mr. President, fuck off. So the pushback right now against Trump's attempt to bully other countries into submission, whole military and regional alliances into submission, is failing. And the adverse impact of that will fall to the United States, also to our economy, because we've seen, as I said yesterday, Denmark has now backed out of U.S. Treasury bonds. And I will just say that, my view on this is that given everything that Trump has done, it's well-deserved. Am I pleased about it from the standpoint of the American people? No. But, he has brought this upon us, and the blame for all of it should fall at his feet. All right. I want to talk for a second. I was asked again about establishment Dems and, why it is. We talked about Cory Booker yesterday and all this stuff of like, we should just give more money to ICE for training. All right. And I have to say that one of the things that at this point, I think we have to kind of consider is that either the establishment Dems are totally removed from reality, which isn't impossible. They're living in a DC bubble, or they're being advised by consultants who have no idea or relationship to what the general public is experiencing or feeling on the ground right now. I have said all along that, the old guard has to go. And right now that means supporting the Congressional Progressive Caucus, progressive candidates who are calling for the abolishment of ICE, and also supporting new progressive candidates where you live who are running for office. Because the only way out of this is going to be by electing people who are willing not just to fight back against fascism, but to actually build a better country on the other side of it, who understand exactly what is happening and how to fix it. And so, just got to remind everybody that we can't count on some of these elected officials to do the right thing. And I will also say Chris Van Hollen yesterday came out in favor of abolishing ICE in no uncertain terms. I would be very happy to see him as the next Senate Majority Leader. And I actually think that given everything that he did to fight for his constituent, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, given all of his incredibly strong statements against ICE and CBP, he would make a very good candidate for the next Senate Majority Leader. And that pressure should be levied. Okay, we have to talk about subpoenas that came out of the DOJ yesterday for Tim Walz and Jacob Frey and Keith Ellison, the Attorney General of Minnesota, and various other Minnesota elected officials. Okay, this is again the weaponization of the Department of Justice against perceived political enemies of the president. However, I want everybody to be really clear that just because a subpoena issues doesn't mean that the person who it is charged to will actually end up responding. All right. And this is the farce of this is that it's a claim to investigate campaign financing. Okay. I have very big questions about who has financed the ballroom that is going into the place of the East Wing. I have very big questions about who financed the inaugural, because we knew that very strange donations were rolling in from tech bros over and over and over again. For what? My opinion on that, speculation, is that it was in exchange for exemptions from tariffs, but we don't know. Okay. Hundreds of millions of dollars have been raised for that ballroom. Tens of millions of dollars were raised for the inaugural. What was that money for? A lot of it looks like bribery, right? Which, by the way, is a basis for impeachment. So, one of the things that we have to be aware of here is that, of course, every accusation is a confession. But second of all, the way that subpoenas work is that if you receive a subpoena and you have a basis to contest it in court, like it's meritless or like it's overbroad or like it asks for things that are otherwise considered confidential, you can fight it in court. You file a separate action asking for the subpoena to be quashed. I always have to say quashed, not squashed. It's a term of art in the law, quashed. And I would expect that every Minnesota official that has received a subpoena from the DOJ is going to file such a case. And then it will be reviewed by a federal court judge who will determine the merits of whether or not the subpoena was justifiably issued. Okay. And it may be granted in part and denied in part. The terms of the subpoena may be narrowed, meaning that they only have to provide certain information, not everything that was asked for. We're not going to know how that plays out unless and until there is a ruling from a judge. All right. I'm just going to say one thing here because I'm watching the comments fly by here. Okay. All this random speculation that there's a bunker going in beneath this new ballroom. Can I just point something out? There already was a bunker, right? This is one thing that kind of drives me crazy when like the conspiracy theory nonsense flies off the handle. Okay. Every single person who is claiming there's a bunker going in is speculating. They don't have any actual evidence for it, all right? And so it is very important when you are sharing information online that if you do not know whether or not it is factually true, you don't share it. There's already a secure facility under the White House. Okay, they didn't need to tear down the East Wing to build a new bunker, all right? So again, the destruction of the East Wing can simply be what it is, the tearing down of a portion of America's history so that he can build a new Mar-a-Lago to entertain billionaires. That, by the way, is bad enough, right? Okay, back to the subpoenas. We do not know exactly what's going to come from this, but I do expect that the cases will be filed, they will be heard by a judge, and we will see what happens next, all right? So again, I know there was a lot of panic about this yesterday. Yes, it is another indication that there's a weaponization of the DOJ that is moving in the direction of persecuting yet again elected officials who are fighting back against Trump, because this is by far the first time, right? I'm going to point out most of the people who have been persecuted are Black officials, right? Ross Baraka was arrested. LaMonica McIver is still being prosecuted. Letitia James, they've gone after like 3 times now, right? So keep in mind, again, this is one of the things that, you know, they have in their arsenal right now that they think they can use to work. I'm not convinced this one is going to work. All right, so couple quick things here. We're running a webinar on Friday called How to Build Community, Lasting Community Change, Even When Democracy is like under threat. I think that's the title, or dying. I don't think it's dying actually, but it's essentially like even in this era where things are really, really tenuous. I hope you will join us for that. It's free. It's going to air at 1 p.m. on Friday. The link to it is in the posts here on YouTube, and I'll make sure it's dropped into the comments today as well. We already have more than 250 people registered for that webinar, and you should join us because it's really about like, how do you build community power, and, you know, what do we need to do right now to make sure it's sustainable? The second thing that I just want to mention here, as I announced yesterday on Patreon and also here on YouTube, is that we are changing the schedule of the broadcast going forward, starting in the week of February 2nd. The broadcast will now be airing. I know everybody who has missed a Monday broadcast is really happy about this. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Our educational videos over on the Ripple Effect Institute channel will be dropping now on Tuesdays instead of Mondays. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, which I think makes everybody really happy. And that schedule changes because I have a family having a health situation that requires more of my attention. Okay. So please understand that I don't make these changes lightly. I've thought about the audience. I've been very, conscious of what you all have wanted, but I also have my focus needing to be elsewhere a little bit more right now. And in order to keep this work sustainable, that is the change that we are making. So Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, starting the week of February 2nd. So that's next week we'll be on the current schedule. And then February 2nd, we will be moving there. And educational videos will bump from Monday to Tuesday. All right. That is it for today. Please like this broadcast, subscribe here on YouTube or on the podcasting channel where you're listening. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up. And of course, if you have questions for me, and I will remind all of our ongoing Patreon subscribers that if I don't answer them on the air, I am answering them on writing over there. If you want to ask questions, join us at patreon.com/resistancelive for as little as $5 a month. You get to ask questions for 3 hours before every broadcast. And you also get to join us for our weekly bonus broadcast for Patreon subscribers only, which of course will continue despite our scheduling change. All right, that's it, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. I have a feeling the rest of this week is going to be straight chaos. So buckle up, take care of yourselves, and I will see you back here tomorrow. All right, bye. That's our show for today, folks. Thanks so much for being here at Resistance Live. To get more out of the show, including bonus broadcasts, the answers to all your most pressing political and legal questions, and way more, head on over to patreon.com/resistancelive and become a paid subscriber. And don't forget to hit subscribe here on your favorite podcasting platform to make sure that you never miss an episode. See you next time.